Election season continues tomorrow with 5 states, Colorado, Maryland, Oklahoma, New York, and Utah, holding primaries, and 2 states, Mississippi and South Carolina, holding runoffs. Now, a significant amount of attention has been centered on the Senate runoff battle in Mississippi between the Tea Party-backed state senator Chris McDaniel and 6-term GOP incumbent Thad Cochran. The race is incredibly tight. McDaniel received 1,418 more votes than Cochran on the June 3rd primary and is considered the slight favorite. But given that fact, the Cochran campaign has resorted to some rather interesting tactics, including reaching out to Democrats, primarily black voters, to cross over and vote for the incumbent instead of McDaniel. Yesterday, freelance journalist Charles Johnson posted a robocall on YouTube purportedly from the Cochran campaign, encouraging black Democratic voters to do just that.
The time has come to make a stand and say no to the Tea Party, no to their obstruction, no to their disrespectful treatment of the first African-American president. If we do nothing, Tea Party candidate Chris McDaniel wins and causes even more problems for President Obama. It pushes for damaging cuts and funding to our public education system. With your help, we can stop this. Please commit to voting against Tea Party candidate Chris McDaniels next Tuesday.
I got to say, the GOP consultants were hard at work coming up with this one.
The robocall thing is kind of creepy to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm not
you ever gotten one of those?
No, but
yeah.
I hear them, and I'm like, does this actually work?
They use them. I mean, they use them a lot. The NRSC gave $175,000 into the robocall campaign down there. So, I mean, it's
I want an overworked, unpaid campaign intern to call me on my phone.
Well, according to the New York Times, some, like Senate Conservative Fund President Ken Cuccinelli, are questioning whether this tactic is even legal, and they will be deploying poll watchers in Mississippi to keep an eye on things. He says the laws in Mississippi are unusually open to poll watching from the outside. We're going to take full advantage of that, and we're going to lay eyes on Cochran's efforts to bring Democrats in. And of course, if they voted in primaries, that's illegal. Jeff Pender of the Clarion Ledger in Jackson says this Senate race will go down as one of the, quote, most bitter, mudslingingest, bizarre political hootenannies in state history. And it all comes to an end tomorrow. Joining us tonight is Betsy Woodruff, a politics writer who covers elections for the Washington Examiner. Betsy, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm excited as a Jersey girl. I got to say hootenanny, but I just couldn't let it go. If you have been paying attention to this race in Mississippi, which I'm sure you have, I think that's a pretty accurate description of what's been going on down there. And now that it's coming down to the wire, I found it really interesting, the Cochran campaign going after the Democratic voters to try to get them out because he may need them to put him over the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this race is maybe one of the ugliest of this election cycle. It's just gotten down in the dirt, messy. And bringing in the Democratic recruits is really nothing new from Cochran. A pro-Cochran super PAC paid a Democratic political operative, a really prominent guy, to get out the vote for them. Now, why you would hire a Democrat to handle Republican get out the vote is certainly an interesting question, but it's also far from beyond the pale for this campaign, which really has pulled out all the stops. A Cochran staffer was recently arrested and then fired for quote-unquote malicious mischief towards a McDaniel campaign sign. And of course, the McDaniel campaign got some fire today for using a hashtag Who's Your Daddy to criticize a controversial comment from Cochran's daughter. So, I mean, look, it's very messy. I think hootenanny is a very appropriate term, and fans of civility and decorum in politics are going to be a lot happier, you know, in the next 24 hours than they are now.
Well, something that I found interesting about this as well is that it seems as though, you know, with Cochran losing, personally, I think he's going to lose because in areas like the Gulf Coast, where he was usually, that was a stronghold for him because he prides himself on bringing home the bacon back to his district, and the Gulf Coast required a lot of federal money from Katrina to the BP oil spill. There's military bases there, so he was priding himself on bringing money to those areas, and he lost by a significant amount of votes in that area during the primary and the third. So I found it interesting that that he's going after the Democratic votes because he's running out of GOP votes to vote for him based on what we've seen so far.
I mean, look, it's an incredibly close race, but I would rather be McDaniel than Cochran right now, just given all the indicators and numbers that we've seen come out of it. And I think, yeah, that's why you see some, to use a gentle word, unorthodox tactics coming out of the Cochran campaign, is because, this is closer than it's probably ever been for this senator. So, absolutely, we shouldn't be surprised by the kind of stuff that's been going on.
Ellison, this is one of those times where after the Cantor loss, people felt as though, maybe there was an energy, reignited energy into the Tea Party, and people were more engaged. And with some of the races going on, some of the primaries tomorrow, you have, let's say, Colorado, where the Republican there may have gotten a boost, and people are starting to pay attention to, well, what's happening in Colorado? Could we actually see someone like Udall, who's the Democrat, Gardner, the Republican? Could we see a shift in dynamics there because of now this kind of re-energized? They were writing the Tea Party's obituary a couple weeks ago, but it looks like the grassroots are re-energized.
I do think that we've seen a jump in enthusiasm following the Cantor's win, but I don't know, when I look at the Mississippi race, what's interesting to me here is not necessarily what it means for the Tea Party, but more what it means for the Tea Party outside groups, because I feel like this has really been their fight, whereas Cantor's win was really a grassroots effort where you didn't have those outside organizations funneling money in. It was something where the people just rose up and voted them out. So I think this race in Mississippi is interesting and significant for the Tea Party versus establishment narrative, but I think it's more interesting on the grounds of who still has clout and who doesn't, and whether it's the old establishment groups that typically back candidates like Cochran, or if it is more the Freedom Works, Tea Party Express wing of the party.
Well, I can tell you that, for the Senate races, that there's 12 Senate seats that are, according to the Washington Post, are the most competitive. And out of 10 of those 12, Democrats occupy them. 9 out of 12 of those Senate seats, I think we have the map, Romney won in 2012, and 6 of those seats are really vulnerable. And I think that cannot be ignored.
It's not. There was an NPR poll last week that I think goes and re-illustrates this point that you're talking about, is that the president's approval is down in all of those 12 battleground states, 4 of which he won this last election, and while 7, obviously, Romney won. But then you also went and looked, and within that NPR poll, they asked voters who they trusted more on issues like the economy, healthcare, foreign policy, and there was one other. But 3 out of 4, the economy, healthcare, and foreign policy, more people in all of those states said that they trusted Republicans over Democrats. So I do think Republicans have a really good shot and advantage, increasingly so as we move towards 2014, and I think Democrats have a lot to be worried about.
Yeah, the battleground, well, we start this conversation talking about it's the, the grassroots versus the establishment, the Tea Party versus the incumbents. Looks like it's going to be Republicans overall largely running over Democrats. It couldn't look any better for Republicans right now than it does for 2014.
Right now, we've got a long way to go.
From Arkansas across to North Carolina, Republicans seem to be doing well. In all of these ones they have to flip. I'm sorry, I meant Alaska all the way over to North Carolina. All the ones they have to flip to, what do we need, 6? 6 to go?
Well, all we need is 6 to go. And like I said, the Washington Post, places we haven't really talked about, South Dakota, Montana, West Virginia, that's almost a shoo-in in West Virginia. I mean, I think the president's poll numbers are at its lowest in West Virginia because of his position on coal and energy.
Those 3 are I think, done deals at this point. Arkansas, Louisiana, North Carolina are where we're going to look to next. Those are extremely vulnerable Democrats who've been voting with the president over 90% of the time, and now they're having to go home to their districts and explain that. I think we get the 6 seats. I think we could get more. I think on election night, there's going to be some Democrats who are stunned.
Just wait. If we can get some inflation to creep up here, the Democrats are going to be in real trouble then.
Well, and don't forget, we talked a little bit about the enthusiasm gap in Mississippi, a state that's going to stay Republican. The enthusiasm gap in these other states is expanding. Look at the anger gap on Obamacare, and it will shock you.